This is John Martinka, and my special guest today is Todd Schuchart. This is the Getting the Deal Done podcast, and our episode today is going to be a lot of fun because Todd is a fun guy. If you see his marketing materials, and he looks pretty good in a cape, let me tell you that. And we can, for those of you watching, you can see in the background some of his props. I mean, he comes across as a character who is very successful and likes helping others. So, welcome, Todd.
Thanks, John. Good to be here.
Yeah. So let's start out with tell us a little bit about yourself. The Cliff Note version on your background and how you got into doing what you do now.
Yeah, good question. Man, I think John, it probably started in the sixth grade when I read my first sales book, Zig Ziglar on selling, and I was hooked. And what I learned very quickly was the synergy between sales and marketing. And in my own kind of adventures in selling and all the things I've done through my career, I found that there were need at times where I had to take marketing into my own hands in order to drive my own sales revenue. And that really is kind of where the passion was developed, out of born from necessity. And in doing so, ended up with working, very blessed to have worked on the Scripps Interactive team. At the time was with HGTV and eventually spun off into the digital new business acquisition role in the newspaper business, taking them from that kind of antiquated space into the digital era.
Okay.
Learned a ton, learned about market resistance, learned about SMBs and regional plays and just what really the challenges and things that those local businesses can actually do for themselves that'll move the needle. Right? There's so much thrown out in the space, and a lot of it sounds really cool, but it doesn't generate revenue. So there's just some core things that we learned along that process that did it. And then, kind of the evolution of everything. I went out on my own in 16 or 17, and we did a lot of trying to service everybody, very much the same model as the newspaper, right? SMB market, regional. I did some international deals, did some local stuff, but never really specialized in much of anything. And then pre-COVID, we got into the life insurance space. And that's where I learned some really interesting marketing lessons, meaning if you're really truly going to help evolve a space, and the life insurance space pre-COVID was very much like the newspaper business, still operating in that old school, we're the biggest and we do it this certain way. And COVID hit and they had to change gears. And that's when that industry really exciting for a guy like me because I'm not going out and banging on doors. I'm not driving from house. It just doesn't make sense to me because we can do it like this. And we can talk to anybody anywhere, and I never have to put pants on. It's a fantastic way to live. But what we learned in the process was if you're looking for a marketer, you need to find one that exists in your space that does what you do or did what you do if you really want to move the needle. And so in the process, we became licensed life insurance agents. I started selling my leads and optimizing my processes before we rolled them out to the world. And just what we learned in that process and what we're able to do now in that space, nobody can touch us. And then this whole thing that we do, John, is all revolves around a book and a process that we used at Scripps calls the Innovator's Dilemma. And the Innovator's Dilemma, if you haven't read it's an incredible read. It's a life changer. It really repositions how you look at not just yourself in a marketplace, but your competition. It's what Google did to dethrone Yellow Pages. It's what digital did to dethrone the newspaper, right? It's the better, faster, cheaper. And the beauty to the innovators kind of position is I get to look at the landscape, find the gaps and make it better. And it's a very interesting way to approach marketing and getting your hold on your market, whether that's local, regional, national, or global. Does that make sense?
Makes sense, yeah. But I want to go back. In sixth grade, who gave you a book by Zig Ziglar?
I bought it.
Okay, what drove you to do that?
I'm not
At sixth grade,
100%
12
sure.
years old.
12
Selling
years old.
lemonade or cutting grass?
Oh, all of it. Anything I could do to hustle. Actually, at the at the time, I was illegally selling fireworks in grade school. I had a friend who was a dad was a truck driver, and he'd bring them up to New York for us, and I'd take orders throughout the week and fill them on Fridays, and all the kids would go home, and we'd see who came back on Monday with 10 fingers and all their eyes, right? And that got busted quick, but it was my first kind of real kind of push into the entrepreneur space.
Yeah,
What I didn't realize at the time was I set up distribution, an ordering and delivery system. We had accounting pieces put into, the whole thing. So when I was little, we played two things. We played outside when we were kids, right? Like we
yeah,
didn't sit outside all day. So I played Chips, which was that TV show about the cops on
yeah.
motorcycles. We played sports in the streets and we played businessman. And I think the businessman piece has really stuck with me. And I got into reading that book one summer. I think my mom said, "You got to read. You got to do something. You're driving me nuts," kind of thing. And we're at the bookstore, and I said, "This is the book I want." Went home, read it cover to cover. Fell in love with the story of Ziegler and his wife Red, and trying to get her out of the hospital. And he hadn't closed any deals selling pots and pans door to door yet. And he needed, I don't know, 25 or $35 to get her and his new baby home. And that motivation was just enough to get him to start closing deals. And I absolutely love the challenge of it all and the sportsman of it all and just that whole thing.
Okay. Based on what you said, maybe a little tangent on what we were going to talk about was you mentioned that, and I still have a copy of Tom Hopkins' book, How to Master the Art of Sales.
Yeah,
And yeah, some of it's pretty dated. Like right now, people are smart enough. You really don't need 97 different ways to close.
right.
But it does start out about how sales, and we're all in sales to some degree, as I think Daniel Pink's book, To Sell is Human, covers. But he says sales is the best paying hard work and the worst paying easy work there is.
100%.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
when you're in sales, to me when they talk about, well, we got to have income equality and these people make less than those people, put them in sales and then you're on your own.
Yeah. I had one job. I left a sales job and I was like, I'm just gonna get an hourly job. That seems easy to me. And then payday came. And oh my God, I was just miserable. I'm like, nope, going back and selling stuff because this is awful.
Yeah.
It's you could work 48 hours, you work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's the max you can do, right? There's no more
Mm.
money to be made there. And by that was an eye opener. But yeah, sales is that's it, buddy. There's
Yeah.
nothing better.
So what you sell now is, among other things, digital leads, right?
Hmm.
So let's talk about digital leads because it is an important subject. It is reaching people differently. It's reaching a different group of people than traditional ways. And as you said, some companies, some industries have been slow to respond and some are all over it.
Hmm.
But let's talk about digital leads, Todd.
Yeah, I think John, the companies that are still relying on old school, because I don't know if traditional is I think tradition is changing. I
Yeah.
think we're morphing into the digital. Listen, the reality is it's never been easier or more cost effective to start, grow, and scale a business than it is today. You can absolutely bootstrap. We bootstrapped this business that we're in, and we went from three guys grinding into the ground to we got a team of 20 now and revenues that support that. It all comes from that digital space, but back in the day, yellow pages, newspaper, TV, radio, all of it was incredibly expensive. You really needed a huge marketing budget to get started. And today, with a little bit of time on YouTube, some tenacity, and a few social platforms, you can start, grow, and scale anything, anywhere with just a little bit of grind and some attention. So leads is everything, right? If you don't have a supply of customers coming through your door, you could have a product that turns sink water into gold. If nobody knows, it doesn't matter, right? How many really great inventions do you think are sitting on garage shelves or basement shelves of that engineer that just doesn't have the ability or the comfort level to get it out into the world? Right? And
Yeah.
you look at those types of things, you don't have to be the face of a brand. You don't have to do all that stuff. There's so many tools and things you can do now to generate leads for minimal. We had a screen printing business for a while. My wife told me to get a hobby. And I was like, okay, well, that was a hint that I was just bugging her too much. So in true Tim the Toolman Taylor style, I went out and I bought some screen printing equipment, but I bought commercial. I don't know why. It's just one of the, you got to get the best tools. And I started a clothing brand for fun. And I love bicycles, so I started a mountain biking clothing line. And it taught me a lot. I learned how to use Photoshop and Illustrator and to create my own designs. I built my own website. I started my own social channels and figured out how to make them all work together and put a marketing plan and did all the designs. I printed 3 t-shirts and that was the end of it. But what I learned in the process was all these wonderful marketing skills, right? And so nothing is ever a loss. And then a couple years later, I was, really just disenchanted with corporate America and my wife said, "Crack out the screen printing equipment, let's do that." And we did. And we turned into one of the top printers in my market. Out of my garage, we were printing mid six figures every single year. And we did it all on, I used 2 platforms, three if you want to count my website. We had our website that we locally optimized using SEO strategies. Instagram that we used to get in front of local folks that we couldn't normally get in front of. I can't tell you how many deals we closed on off of Instagram. It was every week. And the third and final that made our phone ring, I kid you not, John, nonstop. I still get calls and we shut that down. We sold it just before COVID. I still get calls at least once a week today. And that was Google Maps listings. And it blew up. I spent all of my marketing time optimizing my site, making sure my content was up to date. I'd write a blog post every week without any SEO really thought behind it, just about what I was doing, because that takes care of itself. I posted our work on Instagram. I posted my work on Google Maps, and I asked my clients for testimonials. And those 3 pieces all alone blew that business up. So, there's so many other things you could do, right? You could do, of course, at the time there was Yelp and all these other local things. None of them, not one of them, brought the revenue through the door like those 3 simple pieces did.
Okay. So you had a definitely a consumer product,
Hmm.
uh, or were you selling company stuff too?
We were doing local printing for schools, churches, sporting
Okay.
teams,
Yeah.
one-off here or there type family
Yeah.
reunions, things like that.
So yeah. So they may order 20 shirts for 20 people in a group.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So that's definitely a consumer end use product. How does your work on digital leads differ when it's a B2B?
Yeah. So, what's interesting is the platforms don't change. It now becomes messaging, right? So I think that one of the things we have to understand is who is our audience?
Mm-hmm.
What is the pain? And how do we bring a relief to that pain?
Right.
And then the last piece to kind of thread that all together is How do we tell people that we have the relief to that pain?
Yeah.
And I think that, and everybody talks about Apple and their marketing, but if you really truly look at it, it's brilliant. And they simply do the one thing that most small businesses don't. See, I don't think you have to be a major international conglomerate to have smart marketing. When we sold t-shirts, our tagline is we're your next favorite t-shirt, right? You think about your favorite t-shirt, like when you don't feel good or you want to feel good, you put on that favorite t-shirt you have. You feel like it cut just right, it lays perfectly, it doesn't bother you on your neck. It just feels good. Right? And that's what we talked about. It's is it soft, when you this is the one I have a cold, I want my favorite t-shirt. So it's the kind of same idea. How do you take what you're doing and how do you relay that message to an audience that brings feeling into the equation? And a lot of times you don't see that. It's the landscaper or the guy who mows lawns. He's talking about $29, I'll mow your lawn. That's great, but you just commoditized yourself against everybody else and the kid down the street that has no truck and no responsibilities other than he wants to make a quick 20 bucks to take his girl out on the weekend, right? So how do you as that person make yourself different from everybody else and how do you appetize your marketing message? And it's really simple. Guys who mow lawns aren't mowing lawns. They're giving guys like me my weekend back.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What am I going to do with that time now that I don't have to mow the lawn? I don't have to netty because my allergies are bothering me. I don't have to take a shower. I can just go and do something on Saturday. What is it? Did I just get my golf game back? Right? So it's how do you wrap what you have so that it's different from what everybody else is saying? And I think once you start to think about the benefits of what you bring to the market, that makes it a whole different ballgame for folks. So that's how we kind of disrupted the t-shirt printing business in our market. And it's how we continue to disrupt in the insurance space. Of course, now we get copied in that space more than anything. But um, everybody in insurance, for an example, is get this much death benefit for this much money. Hey, that's great, but the majority of people don't want to talk about dying. So they're going to put that off until usually it's too late. So instead, we talk about life insurance has things that you can use while you're alive. Did you know that? Here's these incredible benefits that you get. They call them living benefits. And that for us was this is 4,000 songs on your phone while you're running around instead of what everybody else did to compete against the iPod and say all the storage and RAM that nobody cares about. Make sense?
It makes sense. So give us a couple few things what you've done in the life insurance that you have done or would do if someone came to you in other industries.
Yeah, so the first is you've got to identify what that unique message is going to be for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to understand that that message is not holistic. You may have multiple client avatars, right? Maybe you speak to men and to women. Maybe you speak to seniors and families just starting out. There's a thing in marketing called life stages,
Yeah.
right? So the first life stage is high school, college, marriage, family. Now we're thinking about college again for our children, and now we're thinking about retirement, and then we're thinking about, end of life planning. And those are kind of your life stages. And inside of your life stages, you have subsets, right? You have, of course, there's probably more subsets now than there've been, but you've got men, women, straight couples, gay couples, whatever. So how does your message equate across multiple avatars in different life stages so that you can attract these folks? Once you kind of understand what that looks like, now it's what do we wrap around that? And then what assets or resources do we need to get that message broadcasted to the world? And 9 out of 10 times, it's a website and it's social media tools. And we'll talk about websites really fast because I think that that's the other thing that's incredibly important. Most people's websites are designed to be a business card online, and it's an incredible waste of very valuable space. If your website isn't a salesperson for you, you missed the boat. So the first thing we got to do is we got to get you a website that actually creates leads for you, right? It's the shift worker at 2 in the morning that can't call you during business hours, but needs your products or services. So if your website isn't set up for them to be able to interact with you and to get on your radar, you're going to miss it. And there are so many websites that are so poorly built and not a tool for sales or generating revenue that they're just not even worth having. So those are the things I'd look at first, and then the rest is testing.
Test.
You get out and you test messages, you test your creatives, you test your websites, and you do all the entrepreneurs are interesting. We come in with we have blinders on because we don't want to get distracted. And then we end up in tunnel foot vision and we're just focused on this one thing and we're not listening. And if that's great if you happen to hit it right on the head and you nailed it, but most people don't. So a lot of times, it's going to take that I feel like this is my best option. So we launch and then we listen. And if we let the audience, the world who's going to consume us, tell us exactly where we need to make the adjustments, we will end up being the number one provider in our industry. It's kind of that simple.
Okay. And so the next step though is sales.
Hmm.
Get these leads, and it's taking advantage of them, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, 100%. Automation is the key. So CRM systems, if you don't have a CRM system in place, I don't know what you're doing. They're so cheap today. You don't have to, it's not like back in the day where you had to buy an Act license or you had to get a Salesforce license and then someone to help you develop the platform to utilize it the way you needed it. So the biggest thing is going to be automations and attention span. So automations help you leverage attention span. So an internet lead has about a 5 minute shelf life, probably more 3 minutes now. Our attention spans today are non-existent. So it's really hard to get in front of a lead within the first 3 to 5 minutes while you're doing other things like running your business, talking to another customer, eating dinner, enjoying your family, I don't know, using the restroom, right? There's a lot of things that can come into play there. So one of the things that I think you have to lean into on the sales side if you're going to do digital lead gen is you have to have a system in place that's going to greet that lead in real time. So for us, we generate leads. They get sent into a CRM system. That lead is less than 45 seconds old when it gets its first message from us. Hey, John, it's Todd. I got your request for X, Y, and Z. Just want to follow up with you really quick. Would you prefer a text message or do you want to do a quick 3 to 5 minute phone call? And whatever they say is how we interact moving forward. Yeah, text message is great. Perfect. Couple quick questions for you. If you're a fencing company, how big's your yard? Right? You have acres, or are we talking feet? Those types of things, and
Yeah.
and you start the process.
Okay. And this is all is this AI driven?
So that's not even AI driven. That's really
Algorithm?
it's just you planning out your sequencing. So
Okay.
one of the things that we learned about AI and conversational AI is that it does a really great job of long-term nurturing. We don't use it for the first 2 weeks. For the first 2 weeks, we've got an automated sequence that's designed to do one thing. It's to get the salesperson into a conversation with a lead. And then the salesperson takes over, no automations, no AI. If in that first 14 days they don't get in contact with the lead, then it moves over to AI and AI will nurture it indefinitely with the same goal in mind is to get the sales conversation started. That's the thing I think people need to realize is these systems are really great. They have a place in time for us, but they aren't replacing you. You still have to interact with your leads. So There's never a system out there that's going to take a lead from raw to sophistication and closed without any interaction from a salesperson or a business owner. It just isn't quite there yet. I don't know when it will be, but it's not today.
Oh, it
So,
sure isn't because I get calls and I know it's an AI voice and it's yeah, it doesn't it for me and I guess anyone with at least somewhat of a brain, it doesn't work.
no. Mm-mm. No, but it's really great in the beginning. Hey, John, it's Todd following up with you, right? You text back, and now it's me. So we turn off all automations, all
Okay.
AI, and now it's salesperson, person to person communication is still key.
It sure is.
Yeah.
Uh, let's finish up. People that watch and listen to this are business owners, people who want to be business owners, advisors, it's a professional type community for the most part. Even whether you've mentioned it or not, what are a couple few things everybody should realize and look at doing?
I think the first is do your homework. Don't buy a sales pitch on digital marketing solutions because there's some really interesting ones out there. And it seems the more interesting and hands off you have to be, the worse they perform. Understand there's a lot of value in your industry knowledge. And if you aren't working with a marketer that truly specializes, and I don't mean they decided on Tuesday that this is Wednesday, now all of a sudden I'm an expert in your industry. That's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You need somebody that specializes in what you do if you're going to hire out. But the reality is, there's a couple of things you can learn. You can learn Google Maps rankings for local and regional. It's an incredibly valuable lead source. You can work on finding and establishing your voice. So that's writing blog posts on your company website.
Hmm.
Don't do keyword research right now. That's not even needed. You do industry specific talk like you would talk to anybody about what you do, and you write a blog post. And you do that every week for the next 6 months.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen is you're going to find and establish your voice. You do the same thing with video. You practice writing and shooting video scripts. You do the same thing with social media posts. And then you realize that you can set up every social media platform, including your blog, and now you have your own network of syndication of content. So you're never going to know where somebody's going to find you and you're going to touch them and it's going to match with what they're looking for. So that's it. Get your message everywhere you possibly can. Focus on finding your voice and understand nobody knows your business better than you do.
Right. Okay. Great advice. Uh, last topic. We talked before we started recording. You do some giving back to both the business community and uh, cancer research. Talk a little bit about
Yeah.
your giving back.
So the cancer research piece is near and dear. That was, everybody's been touched by some. Actually, there's two communities that it's the cancer research and sobriety, and both of those are inspired by my father.
Okay.
Um, he was sober almost 20 years to the day when he passed, and I was convinced that he passed of cancer, but I was convinced that he fought the last day and a half to hit his 20-year mark. Because to anybody that's gone through that, you understand how important those anniversaries and what they mean, not just to you but to your family. So I do everything I can for that community, and then the cancer piece is obviously touches everybody, and
Yeah.
it's a nasty, it's nasty, it's just nasty, and I think anything we can do to help find a cure for some of these cancers is it's what we should be doing everywhere. So those are my two kind of charitable things that I focus on. And then as far as the business community, I do a lot of free sales training on our YouTube channels and our Facebook groups because I really think that listen, I love what I do. I told you that I read my first sales book in the sixth grade. This has been
Yeah.
something I've done my whole life. That's 40 a bunch of years ago that I did that. And I think that there's so much noise out there about selling and marketing that is not valuable. And it just really bothers me. So I do a lot of free content around sales and around the marketing piece. And I'm going to leave you with this, John. Everyone can sell. As soon as you stop trying to sell, right? Sales is about two people. One is speaking, the other is listening to understand, and then responding in kind. That's all it is. So if you're actually paying attention and you're engaged in a conversation and replying based on what you've just heard to understand, you're going to do great. The second that you try to pull an elephant or tricks out of your pocket,
Yeah.
it goes sideways because people don't consume like that anymore. So make a friend and you will have clients. You'll never be able to get rid of them. You'll have clients for life. So that's it. That's my two
That's
cents
it.
for you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Todd. Again, Todd Schuchart. He's based in Greenville, South Carolina. He is helping people locally, regionally, nationally, and internationally. You can contact Todd through the website Razor Ridge, RazorRidge.com. You can find him on LinkedIn. And Todd, this has been a fascinating discussion. I looked at the clock a couple minutes ago and time just flew by. Thank you.
John, thank you. Appreciate it.